Everybody had their coffee. Welcome to the Called Out Church. Man, you look so happy to be here. Well, thanks everybody for being here and being online. This morning, I'm going to go back over something. I don't know if we've ever actually recorded this, but it's more teaching today than anything else, right? Towards the end, we'll get some preaching, but it's mostly teaching. But the second is the heir. And I've talked about this once or twice. However, I think it's very important for us to understand that there's patterns in our Bible. This is another one of these patterns that we see, and it, believe it or not, ends up reflecting on who we are with God, what our place is, and what our inheritance is, right? Heir, inheritance, so on and so forth. But without further ado, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for deeper understanding, and we ask that you help us to just draw some more out of this morning than we ever have before. We ask that you help us to really get deep into your word and understand it fully. And we thank you for it, and we ask that you help us to walk in it each and every day. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so we got to start all the way at the beginning. So Genesis 4, starting at verse 1. Everybody good? Okay, here we go. Now Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bore Cain, and said, I have acquired a man from the Lord. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. Okay. Firstborn, Cain. Secondborn, Abel. Now what we're going to end up seeing from this is something that's called out directly, and I'm going to point it out then, but we also need to see in this that we had somebody who was, both of them being farmers. Well, I guess we could say one's a farmer, one's a rancher. How about that? That's why Joe likes animals more than plants. Anyway, this is one of the reasons, truthfully. I want to be as close as I can to like the examples of the Bible, but I think God gave me a heart for animals, and I just kind of relate to this a whole lot. But, so Cain, he grows plants. Abel, he's a rancher, right? He's got sheep, livestock, right? So verse 3, and in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought an offering of the fruit of the ground to the Lord. Okay, so he brought something to God. There's nothing negative there so far. However, there's more to it. Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat. Right, so he gave the fattest firstborn he had. That's what that's saying. He gave the best animal. His absolute best, he gave that to God. And the Lord respected Abel and his offering, but he did not respect Cain and his offering. And Cain was very angry, and his countenance fell. Some people try to say, oh, it's because, this is a live animal and these are just plants. No, that's not it. He didn't give him the best. It's just he brought him an offering. What you can see between the difference in the two is that Cain brought the best. Abel brought the best, gave God the best. Cain just gave something. We see in our New Testament when we give, we are supposed to give generously, right? That is the one time in our New Testament that talks about giving. And if God has given you a heart to give, if he has spiritually gifted you with giving, then give generously, is what he says, right? Well, Cain was just like, well, I'll just give whatever. There's not real thought behind that. Whether he was, God's standard and our standard are sometimes two different things, right? I tell my boys sometimes, right? What you say is clean and what I say is clean is two different things, right? Yes, you technically went in there and wiped a counter surface. However, if you can run your hand back over that and you feel little crunchy bits all over the counter, it ain't clean. Just because you went through the motions doesn't mean it's acceptable. Cain is going through the motions. Okay? He didn't try his very best. He didn't give his best. All right. Let's continue. So, Cain is very angry and his countenance fell. He started throwing a pity party. Poor pitiful me. He was pouting. All right. Verse 6. So the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry and why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. God is telling us something very important here, is that when we allow sin to sit there at the door, right? He knew when he gave that to God, it wasn't acceptable. He didn't try his hardest. He didn't give his best. What he did was a selfish act. Anytime we have selfishness in us, sin is lying at the door. And it wants you to be selfish. This is exactly what Satan is. And the opposite of love is self. Okay, so what Cain is doing here is saying, I'm more important than you, God. And that is where God's trying to teach him, no. But instead of learning the lesson, I could never do anything right. Okay. Now, pity party, right? But God says you should rule over that. You should stop thinking this way. You have the power already to stop your mind from going down this road and just change the way you're thinking. Repent. Change the way you're thinking to line up with what I'm teaching, is what God's trying to tell him. And what does he do? He gets even madder. Because, what, I'm not perfect? No, you're not perfect. Sin is lying at the door and it's got a hold of you right now. Okay, so, verse 8. Now Cain talked with Abel his brother, and it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is Abel your brother? So, instead of learning his lesson, he allowed sin to come in the door over a pity party. Over, just do what I'm telling you. If you do well, you'll be accepted. If you don't do well, then sin's sitting there waiting for you. He decided, I don't want to learn the lesson. I want to do it my way. Okay. So the firstborn is not in agreement with God. Abel, however, was. However, what happens to Abel? He is slain after his acceptable sacrifice. Y'all following how this is pointing forwards towards something? Okay, patterns, right? This is another thing that kind of points forward towards Jesus and what he would do. Now, halfway through 9, it says, he said, I do not know, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what have you done? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Right? Anytime your parents ever said, hey, what's going on here? They already know the truth. This is exactly what God was doing, giving him the opportunity to take responsibility for his bad actions, but he avoided it yet again. He's avoiding being taught a lesson by God. And so, he receives a curse on top of this. Right? Sometimes you ever tell your children, look, you tell me the truth, your punishment is not going to be nearly severe because now I know you're accepting that it was wrong. Now I got to punish you further. Why? You haven't accepted that this is not the way to be. You're still trying to weasel your way out of it to get away with it, which means you agree with your actions still. That's not the way to be. So God's got to put a punishment on him. All right. So now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you till the ground, it shall no longer yield its strength to you. A fugitive and a vagabond you shall be on the earth. So his gift that he was gifted with by God is now no longer gifted to him. Everything he was good at, now he's not anymore. Why? Because he quit doing this with God, and so God has taken it from him. He took the grace away because, matter of fact, Cain, we should say it this way, he's not taking the grace away, Cain is refusing it.
Yes, sir.
Right? Cain's saying, no, I don't want it. I don't want to walk this way. I don't want to be down this path. How many times did he do it? The offering, killed his brother, rejects the lessons, right? Romans 1, he says he gives them over, gives them over, gives them over, right? And then, all right, hands off. Now it's Cain's responsibility to come back to the Lord, but, he's not worried about coming back to the Lord necessarily. But check this out. Verse 13. And Cain said to the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Surely you have driven me out this day from the face of the ground. I shall be hidden from your face. I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, and it will happen that anyone who finds me will kill me. Now, here's what's real crazy, right? Now we're crying. Now we're crying because of our own actions and because God has to do something to separate the poison away from the rest of the family. I can't allow this to continue to affect the family. You refuse to learn, you have to go. Okay? So now he's given himself a pity party once again, and it's like your own actions have caused this. And the Lord said to him, therefore, whoever kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should kill him. Watch. Still, God is providing grace over top of him to protect him. Even after he says, look, I love you, man, but you got to get out of here. You're not going to affect the rest of my children the way you have these. The firstborn is acting like this. Okay? So watch. Genesis 4, verse 25. So we're skipping down a little bit after he's been kicked out. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bore a son and named him Seth. For God has appointed another seed for me instead of Abel. Abel was the heir to begin with. But now God has provided another one in replacement. So now the second has become the heir of what? The line in succession towards Jesus. So the first one was never going to be, because he was never what was acceptable standards for God. And there was something in particular we needed. Somebody who would follow and walk after God in his ways. And here we have Seth. Abel was the one doing it, but he was killed by his brother. Now God, let's say, has resurrected the second through another child, another seed. He has taken his brother's place to be the inheritor, right? The heir. Okay. So, for God has appointed me another seed for me instead of Abel, whom Cain killed. And as for Seth, to him also a son was born, and he named him Enosh. Then men began to call on the name of the Lord. Then, once this heir came, people started calling on the name of the Lord. Now, mind you, Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel, right? Seth. the world was much more populated. And what you will see people argue over sometimes is, where'd these people come from? Our Bible is only written from a standpoint of who are the heirs in the line of Christ. Y'all follow? This whole book is about inheritance. Who is in the line of Jesus? This is where it comes from. This is where we start. This is what we're talking about. Hint, hint. Winky, winky. All right? Now, let's keep going. Genesis 16. So that was our first pattern. First is basically rejected, let's say. Still has some grace on top of him, but he doesn't accept it. But the second is the heir. So now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abram, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go to my maid, perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abram heeded the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife. And Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. So he went in to Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress became despised in her eyes. Now, I want you to take notice of the names. Right now we're Sarai, which is princess, and Abram, which is exalted father. Watch what happens to their names after we get the second. So verse 9, the angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit yourself under her hand." Right? This is talking to Hagar, saying, hey, go back. Right? She was running because she was upset. I know we skipped forward a bit, but bear with me. Then the angel of the Lord said to her, this is talking to Hagar, "I will multiply your descendants exceedingly, so that they shall not be counted for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are with child," "You are with child, and you shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard your affliction. He shall be a wild man. His hand shall be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren." All his brethren, not the Lord. Y'all follow that? Okay? So this is Ishmael's, right? God said, okay, I'm going to have a little bit of grace over top of this situation, but this is not what I have condoned. He heard the prayers of her, and he's helping. But this is not where the line of Jesus is going to come from. So we're going to go forward to Genesis 17:15. And God said to Abraham, "As for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name." What's the difference between Sarai and Sarah? Sarai is princess. Sarah is exalted princess. Basically, it's more of like a queen type of a status. Why? Well, because now, "And I will bless her and also give you a son by her. Then I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of peoples shall be from her." Okay? So now he is giving her an elevated status. All of my people will come from her. And you, Abraham. So now he's received his name, Abraham. Abram was exalted father. Abraham is exalted father of multitudes. Many nations are going to come from you, Abraham. Okay. So verse 17, then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said in his heart. All right, he's laughing at God now. Anybody ever do this? You hear some crazy stuff? Like, ain't no way. Come on, man. You serious with this? So, I think this is coming from the standpoint of he is in his human mind and not understanding the things that God can do. This is ridiculous, what you're saying. But this is God saying, all right, child, right? You ever talk to your kids and they just can't believe what you're telling them? Why? Because they don't have experience, so you tell them how to do it, and then they go, oh, it's magic. No, it's not. This is how things work. This is what God's doing. He's trying to teach his son, this is how things work. I say things, they happen. All right? Okay, so, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old, and shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? And Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. My firstborn, though, my firstborn. Then God said, no, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his descendants after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you, but behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. He shall beget 12 princes, and I will make a great nation. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, my agreement with these people and you is to come from Isaac, not Ishmael. He says, I'm going to help him. But the everlasting, the forever covenant, the forever agreement is not with him. I will help him in an earthly manner. But forever, it's going to come through Isaac, the second. He is the second born. He is the heir. All right. He shall beget 12 princes, so on and so forth. 21. But my covenant I will establish with Isaac from Sarah shall bear to you at this set time next year. Then he finished talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. Prophecy, and letting him know exactly what's about to occur. But also, yeah, okay, I'll help this one. You asked me, his mother asked me, I'll keep my word, I'll help them. But my plan is going to come through this. And we see as time progresses, right, he told Abraham prior to it happening what was going to happen. Okay, so let's go Genesis 25, skipping forward again, verse 19. This is the genealogy of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begot Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old, and he took Rebekah as wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren. Oh my goodness. Dad and son both had barren wives. God's setting some things up. He's trying to say, hey, look, man, I got this. How in the world, right? Impossibilities. God is showing his power through these women, by the way. These women are being used to show God's power. The men were just fine, but the miracles were happening through the women. The miracle through Mary, all these things are to point forward towards what Jesus would be and how he would come forth. They were barren. That means no matter what a man would do, they could not conceive. Unless what? God came into the situation and intervened, such as Mary. Y'all follow? Okay. So, now Isaac pleaded with the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his plea, and Rebekah his wife conceived. But the children struggled together within her, and she said, "If all is well, why am I like this?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. Can you imagine just being able to go talk with him? Okay. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb. Two people shall be separated from your body. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger." Well, we got something happening again. Oh, they're twins. How can there be a firstborn? The first, right? If you ever read the law, it's the first that comes from the womb is the firstborn. Now, and that's the one that belongs to the Lord. However, he's setting this weird pattern up, like all people knew in this region at the time who receives the inheritance. If you ever go over to this area of the world, they'll have 5 wives. They will have 5 wives as long as they can care for them. However, the first wife is the most exalted. Okay? So this kind of goes back to Sarah as well. She was the first wife. Second wife, no, not as good. But the second heir came from the first. Now, in that area though, typically the firstborn son is the inheritance of everything. Everything goes towards that one. That's the golden child. Everything goes, all the money. Education, clothes, food, we're going to put it all in this one. You'll see some of them kids walking around without shoes, torn up clothes, but then here's this other one wearing Nikes and, you know, some nice dress clothes, suits, stuff like this, right? Like, what are you doing? Take care of all your children. Nope, that's not how they do it. The first. So it's important to understand this is a much greater impact in understanding the thought process. But let's keep going. So verse 9. Now Jacob cooked a stew, and Esau came in from the field, and he was weary. And Esau said to Jacob, "Please feed me with the same red stew, for I am weary." Therefore his name was called Edom. But Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright as of this day." And Esau said, "Look, I am about to die, so what is this birthright to me?" So hungry. Seriously? His concern was more for his flesh than it was for what was more important in the future. He had the inheritance. It was meant for him to begin with. However, his brother says, "I want the inheritance. I'll give you some stew. Give me the inheritance." He was so weak in here. He had no resistance, no discipline in his mind, no maturity about him to say, "No, that's crazy. This is not worth it." Why? I feel like I'm going to die. A little bit of a hunger pain, and he's like, "Yeah, okay, what's a birthright to me? Give me some stew." Then Jacob said, "Swear to me as of this day." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob, the second. He is the second born. And Jacob gave Esau bread and stew of lentils. Then he ate and drank, arose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. He knew he made a bad decision. Now, later on we see Esau cries about it, right? Cain cried about it. What did it do to fix it? It was already done. Whining about it didn't fix the issue. It was already done. Right? So, when we make these decisions that put a permanent thing in our life, when we make these decisions, and then we go back and we say, God, why would you do this to me? And he reminds us, you made that decision. It wasn't God that sold the birthright, it was Esau. Esau made that decision. Cain decided to reject God's lessons. Are you following what I'm saying? It's not God that does this most of the time, it's us that makes the choice. However, crying about the choices we made instead of walking with God to begin with and listening to his direction, we would be much better off if we would just listen and stop choosing some of these things for ourselves and making these bad choices. Now, God is like, we're going to have to walk this thing out now. Sometimes people go to prison and they have to walk that out for the rest of their life because of the choices that they made. But does that mean they cannot serve God or God does not love them? No. Matter of fact, they can still be of service and still walk it out from that day forward with God, and he can use that. We got to remember that. However, if we despise God, we don't have a whole lot going for us. All right. So now, Job 38. Now we're going to get a little hinty hint, winky winky, and where we're going with this. So, Job 38, verse 4. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? So this is from Job questioning God. What's going on? How come you're doing all this to me? And God is starting to tell Job, my ways are above your ways. My thoughts are above your thoughts. Here, let me ask you all these questions, and all have the same answer, right? So where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? You, God. Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? Who measured it? God. To what were its foundations fastened? God knows. Job doesn't. Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So as God is creating the physical world around us, the angels were watching. That is to say this. Here's my point in even bringing this in. The angels already existed. The only other beings that are kind of like us, free will, servants of God, able to understand. So I put it to you this way. They're the firstborn. And then he created us. And if you look at how this has been going, Jesus is the heir, and he brought himself as a man, not an angel. Y'all follow that? So that he may lay his life down, so that you may have an inheritance with him. Oh, wait a minute. Hebrews 2, verse 5. For he has not put the world to come, of which we speak, in subjection to angels. But one testified in a certain place, saying, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the son of man that you take care of him? You have made him a little lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, and set him over the works of your hands. You have put all things in subjection under his feet. King David wrote this. Okay? And we got Hebrews referring back to it. However, we're talking about it in this way. Who's in the line of King David? Jesus. For in that he put all in subjection under him, he left nothing that is not put under him, to include the angels. But now we do not yet see all things put under him, so not quite yet, made lower than the angels for a time. time has a beginning and an end. All right. But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor, that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. So now that he has done this, he will be raised with glory and honor and will put all things underneath his feet. That's his inheritance. Right? So if we go to Romans 8, verse 12, therefore, brethren, we are debtors not to the flesh, but to the Spirit of God. To live according to not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. But if by the Spirit you put to death the deeds of the body, you will live. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are sons of God. So now you have been born again into an inheritance underneath of God. A spiritual inheritance. The angels are spirit. They were the firstborn into the Spirit. You're the second. You came after them. You have the second inheritance, right? Now, verse 14. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, then heirs. Heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. All things have been placed underneath his feet. Just as he is, so are you in this world. Your inheritance is the same as Christ. You have been made a little lower than the angels for a time. So, if indeed we suffer with him, that we may also be glorified together with him. He is the head, we are the body. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Now Esau sold his inheritance for a bowl of soup, because his present condition, right, his present sufferings. But Paul's saying to us, consider that our sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to what we will receive with Christ. If you're too concerned with how hungry you are versus what would you have of me, God, we have an issue. We have to be more concerned with what God has for us in the long run than what is happening right now. If you do push-ups to the point where you cannot lift your body, everything burns a whole lot, but we know through experience it'll make us stronger. Matter of fact, if we just wait about 30 seconds, we'll be able to get up again. Everything God has us doing and suffering through, give it a second. This is a temporary problem that will not last forever. But what will last forever is what you walk out with him. It may make you uncomfortable. It may make you hurt emotionally. It may make you hurt physically. But in the long run, spiritually, you will be strengthened for it. But if you sell your inheritance, what was it? As soon as Jesus had the Holy Spirit descend upon him, immediately what happened? He was tested in the wilderness. fasted for 40 days. Here's some bread. Do you want to sell your inheritance, Jesus? Give it to me. Jesus said, no. You tricked the first Adam, you will not trick me. Y'all seeing where this is? He is the second heir. He is Abel. He is Jacob. He is Isaac. He is all these things. We are in him and he is in us. We are the second heir with him. Satan hates you so much because you have been promised something he was never offered. Why? Why? Because he don't want to listen to God. He wants to do it on his own. All the correction that God could ever offer, to be in the presence of God and to be able to talk to him directly, to go to the throne room, to go amongst him in his courts and be able to accuse you, to be able to argue that you're not as good, you don't deserve your inheritance. You need to give that to me. That was for me. You made me first. That's his attitude in all of this, is that you don't deserve it. You're not the first heir. You made me with all power, God. You should be giving that to me. They're less than me. But God says, no, I will take the weak and make foolish the wise. There's a whole lot of stuff that God has intended for you. And you have to realize these things to understand. What is Satan after? He's after proving that you don't deserve your inheritance. So why give him any argument whatsoever? A lot of times I look at it this way. Everything we do in this life, somebody's looking to tear it down. But God is trying to build you up. The way of this world is not the way of God. Everybody that belongs to this world, instead of saying, man, I'm happy for you, they will try to tear you down. Thus, we should not be this way, and we should let the whole world know who we are by the way that we love each other. Right? So, if we're all to receive this inheritance, why would we be upset if one person is being exalted by God? God is lifting them up and getting them and putting them in good places, right? Where he needs them. But there's a jealousy that ends up happening. Let's not be like Cain. Let's not tear our brothers and sisters down because God has put them in good places. Maybe they have progressed to the point of maturing to where God can now use them where he has put them. Maybe we got to ask ourselves a question, what lesson am I refusing to learn, God? And then he brings you back to it and he goes, oh, that one, huh? Oh, that one you already told me before that I wanted to ignore? That one? I need to pay attention there? Okay. Self-examination and allowing God to pick those things for us, man. That's what you focus on. So, let's just finish this out. For I consider the suffering of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us, for the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope. Because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. Creation will be freed and given to the freedom of the children of God. Co-heirs to all creation with Christ. Previous slide. He's going to free it up. Just as he saved you, he's going to redeem all creation and then say, here, do with it as you will, freely. Liberty of the children of God. the glorious freedom over all creation will be given to you. That's what that says. That's profound. Some people may go, well, that's just absurd. Really? He created Adam and did what? Turned over creation to Adam. What you say it is, it will be. What you name these animals, that's what they'll be. He gave him the power, a newborn man. Okay. So he was walking it out with God until, right? So if you walk it out with God, and he is turning this glorious freedom over to you, what do you say it is? It matters. It matters a whole lot. Do you not think that God is not allowing you to start exercising this part of who you are already? He may put some bumper rails on it here or there. Like, well, simmer down, right? We don't need to bring dragons back. Just playing with that one, but you know what I'm saying. But he's gonna, everything within his will. Everything within his will. Until the point that we become the fullness of Christ. And as Christ would do things, you do things. But for now, we're a little lower. Why? So that we can not lean on our own understanding, but lean on Christ to understand what it is and how we should act and what we should be. If we don't learn to lean on him for all the knowledge, all the wisdom, all the correct ways to do things, every time we do it, we screwed up just a bit. But then if we allow him to train us, we learn these lessons and we are being perfected slowly to the point where he can just go, here. That's good stuff. So last slide. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pains together until now. Not only that, but we also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, because we know it gets better than this. This can't be all it is. This cannot be all life has for me. Anybody ever said that or felt that? Was it before or after you received Christ? Because your distractions with worldly things kept you from even being able to think this way. The lusts of the flesh will distract you. You receive Christ within yourself and you start to go, there's more. There is more. I know there's more. And it feels like it's just out of reach. And I don't know why it feels this way, but there's something in me screaming out, there's more. Even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body. This thing gotta go. For we were saved in this hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one still hope for what he sees? It's already in your hand. Yet we have something screaming out inside ourselves. There is more. Why? Because you don't have it fully together yet. Until when? The redemption of the body. As soon as that happens, we become so much more. Okay. But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with perseverance. Perseverance. You're going after something. You are trying to perfect all the time, allowing God to use the Spirit inside you to perfect you. With perseverance, you continue to run the race. You continue to go after what God says for you. You haven't attained it yet. You don't say, it's enough. You don't get lazy with it. You continue to progress. God is infinite. Remember that when you think, how much more do I have to learn? Infinity. It doesn't stop. So, sometimes we get tired, but you are the second heir. You are meant for something. You have an inheritance that no other being created has been given. Otherwise, Jesus would have come back as a horse. No, he didn't come back as a horse, or he didn't come down as a horse. He came as a man. He didn't come as an angel. He came as a man. That's important to realize, that there is something very particular that he has invested inside of human beings. And he loves you so much. And he has big things set on your plate. He's trying to train you in them now. But if we don't pay attention, man, if we sell it, for what? Things that go away. Right? It's the whole Skittle test with children. They put the Skittles down. If you don't eat it, I'm going to come back in 30 seconds and I'm going to double it. They come back. The ones that don't eat it, they'll just put one down, or, double what's there. The other one, you'll just get one. All right, don't eat it. 30 seconds, I'll come back and double it. This one's got 4. This one's only got what now? It's received 3 total. Now this one is going to double again. 8. You have 4. You following this? 16. You only had 5. Why? Because you could not resist. You could not discipline your mind. We got to allow the mind of Christ to discipline us. Okay. With that said, JP, will you close us out?
Dear Father, we just thank you for the blessings you have given us, for the heir, for making us heirs. We thank you that you have brought us into your family. Father, I ask that you would help us to see our role, help us to follow you, help us to learn, to discipline our minds so that we can hear you and obey you above everything else. Be with us this week. Again, protect those that are not here. Bring them safely back. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.